Hi, welcome back to the garden. Today is Monday, April 10th. The long-term forecast seems to have changed a little bit for my area. The lowest low is supposed to be 48 degrees, and the highest high is supposed to be 81 degrees over the next 14 days. But let's talk about our potato tower. Now inside of here, I planted some indeterminate potatoes. This first one's coming up, and I just dug again. And we got more coming up there. So we're going to continue to hill this little area. Now the thing about determinate and indeterminate potatoes, most of them are determinate. Your Pontiac Red, your Yukon Gold, your Kennebec. Our indeterminate is our russet. That's the only one that we plant that's indeterminate. And after last year being scolded about the potato tower, I did a little more research, and we're going to see if that actually works. But the rest that I planted in here and over here, those were Pontiac Reds and Yukon Golds. And I know for a fact that those are determinate. They grow right on the ground, right at the root layer. They're beautiful under the deep mulch. Now I got this amaranth I need to do something with. What I found last year is you can plant them in little clumps and they still grow really well. What I have learned over the last couple of years is underneath this mulch with the living soil, you can plant pretty close and it doesn't hurt the growth of the plants at all. Just like being out in a field that's full of life. Grass plants aren't set 6 inches apart so they can get the nutrition from the fertilizer. We don't fertilize. The life in the soil fertilizes. And all of that life takes place right around the roots. So the more roots you have, the more life you have. Just makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and plant these in little clusters back here against this fence. They're going to get quite tall, so we'll see what we get. Come on, let's plant. Now arugula is just about done. That mini greenhouse, it was touching the top and they froze. But our lettuce is doing spectacular. So we're not going to disturb our lettuce. We're just going to plant that amaranth right along there. That lettuce may last all summer long, which is okay. Still going to leave this kind of thick up against the fence as a weed barrier. But I'm just going to pile this other. That's one way we mix this together. As we get this down in soil, I did get another question. Actually, 2 questions in one. Do we get Japanese beetle? Which yes we do. How do we control it? And what do we do for mold damage under the mulch? Well, that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go ahead and treat this now that we got it opened, because I don't want to deal with the voles. The moles I don't really care about. This was recommended by one of the viewers, and this is castor oil. And this goes down into the soil, and it's organic, so it breaks down just like the mulch. And I've been putting it on pretty heavy this spring after they ate all the potatoes. And right here at the edge, I definitely don't want to have that as a path for them to come in. That right under the mulch, that is beautiful soil. Look how easy that is to dig in. I'm going to use my chopstick to kind of break these up. Give me a clump or two. Now that is beautiful. We've got more than a few here. Just look at that. Look at those little clusters. Just make a little depression. Stand them up. Get a little soil in around them. Snug them down. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do this, but I think this will be okay. I did plant it kind of heavy last year in little clumps, and they came up just fine. can go ahead and put a little bit of mulch in between these. And the beauty is if it does get cold, we can still cover these. Now the peas we planted are coming up, and they're almost catching up with the ones we already started. I did talk about the moles and the voles, but I didn't talk about the Japanese beetles. Yes, we do have Japanese beetles, and that's one of the reasons we have moles in here. They're after the grubs. Remember, M for meat, but when they make their trails, the little voles use those trails and then pop up here and there and eat your vegetables. Voles, V for voles. Okay, as far as the Japanese beetle goes, the way we handle it, well, first, we kind of like the moles in here eating them. Each one of those beetles lays 50 eggs, and the moles didn't get them all. They got a lot of them, but that's one of the reasons I really like seeing worms over there when we were planting amaranth. Remember when we dug those sweet potatoes, the voles had eaten half of them, and the moles had eaten all the worms and all the grubs in that entire area. But what I do when I actually see those Japanese beetles, they're the little green ones. The June beetles obviously are the bigger green ones, and they don't hurt anything. But the Japanese beetles, they're really hard on peas, they're really hard on beans, and a bunch of other things in your garden. When we see them, we pick them off by hand and drop them in a bucket of soapy water. But there's another thing you can use. Now this recipe's organic, and it's a spot spray. It's a couple drops of Dawn dishwashing soap, cold pressed neem oil, and water. You don't want to spray it all over your garden, because then you endanger your ladybugs, and you endanger your praying mantises and the other things that are beneficial in your garden. You don't want to kill or hurt the life in the soil, but it is an effective spot spray. And when we get blister beetles, I go medieval, because you can't pick those off by hand. They got a little juice in them that will burn your skin. One of the reasons I plant so heavy is I do understand that we're going to get some losses. Since we don't use chemicals, since we don't use poisons, the moles like to eat the grub worms, so there's a trade-off there. Every once in a while they'll hit a batch of roots and a plant will fall over. But the worst trade-off is when those voles come up through those tunnels and eat everything. We can't have that. So the castor oil is a deterrent. There are other things, if you get really infested, you might want to go medieval on them. Well, now that Art convinced me that we're not going to get another frost, I think we'll spend the rest of this week planting. I hope you join me for that. If you want to learn more about the life in the soil, click that link right there and I'll meet you back in the garden. If you want to learn more about the deep mulch, click that link right there and I'll meet you back in the garden. And until next time, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and God bless you. Come on, let's plant.
Let's go plant garden.